Why do virtual machines need virtual CPU and BIOS emulation? Imagine trying to run a computer inside another computer. It sounds tricky, but that's exactly what virtual machines do. They let you run multiple computers on one physical machine. But how do they do it? That's where virtual CPU and BIOS emulation come in. A virtual machine is a software version of a physical computer. It needs to pretend to be hardware so the operating system inside it can work just like it's on a real machine. The virtual CPU acts as the processor for the virtual machine. It executes instructions just like a real computer's processor. The virtualization software, called a hypervisor, creates this virtual CPU and makes it look like a real one to the operating system. This way, the guest operating system can run smoothly without knowing it's inside a virtual environment. Multiple virtual machines can share the same physical CPU. The hypervisor manages this sharing, making sure each virtual machine gets enough processing power. This setup allows many virtual machines to run on one physical computer efficiently. It also keeps each virtual machine isolated from the others, so they don't interfere. Now, the BIOS, or Basic Input-Output System, is like the startup manager of a computer. It checks all the hardware components, runs a quick test called the power on self-test, and then loads the operating system. In a physical computer, the BIOS is a chip on the motherboard. But in a virtual machine, there's no physical chip. Instead, the hypervisor emulates the BIOS or UEFI firmware. This emulation makes sure the virtual machine can do the same startup process as a real computer. Without virtual BIOS emulation, the guest operating system wouldn't know how to initialize hardware or start up properly. It would have no way to interact with the virtual hardware, making it impossible to run. The emulated BIOS provides a standard interface, so the OS can detect hardware, run diagnostics, and load the system just like on a real machine. This setup also makes it possible to run different operating systems on the same physical hardware. You could have a Windows system, a Linux system, or even older legacy systems all running in their own virtual machines. Each one thinks it's on a real computer because of the virtual CPU and BIOS emulation. When you enable CPU virtualization features in your computer's BIOS, like Intel Virtualization Technology or AMD Virtualization, it makes the virtual CPUs run even faster. These features allow the virtual CPU to communicate more directly with the physical CPU, reducing delays and boosting performance. In the end, virtual CPU and BIOS emulation are what make virtual machines work. They create a hardware environment that the operating system recognizes and can interact with. This setup allows us to run multiple operating systems, test new software safely, or keep old systems alive, all on a single physical computer.